Just meeting my parents. Don't worry. That's what my fiancé kept telling me before meeting his family. 15 people gathered at an expensive restaurant. The bill came to $3,200. My boyfriend's mother looked at me and said, "Sweetheart, you pay. We'll wait outside." I reached for my wallet, but what happened next shocked everyone. But before I begin, I'd like to ask you to like and subscribe to the channel. Thank you and enjoy listening. Kira sat in the Uber, staring at her phone screen where a bank notification blinked. Card transaction minus $95. Balance remaining $380. There were still 12 days until payday. She clenched her fists so tightly that her nails dug into her palms. The dress. That damned emerald dress she'd bought 2 hours ago because Max said, "Wear something nice." And now she'd have to live on pasta and rice for 2 weeks to make it to the next month. The driver slowed at a red light, and Kira caught her reflection in the side window. 29 years old. Marketing specialist with 5 years of experience. Her own apartment with a mortgage. Independent and self-sufficient. So why did she feel like a schoolgirl being called to the principal's office right now? Because in 1 hour, she was going to meet Max's parents. And somehow, everything inside her was tight with anxiety, even though he swore it would be simple. "Just a family dinner, don't worry," he'd said last night when she asked for the 5th time what she should wear and how to behave. Kira remembered that conversation perfectly. They were sitting in her tiny studio apartment on the outskirts of Manhattan. Max was scrolling through something on his phone while she paced nervously around the room. "Max, just tell me something concrete," she'd pleaded then. "Is your mom strict? Is your dad talkative? What do they like to discuss?" "Kira, relax." He hadn't even looked up from the screen. "Normal people. Mom's a bit straightforward, but kind. Dad's quiet. Everything will be fine." "Fine." Kira smirked now, looking out the taxi window. Somehow that word wasn't reassuring. In 6 months of dating, Max had never told her anything specific about his family. He answered all questions with generic phrases and quickly changed the subject. When Kira asked why he was taking so long to introduce her to his relatives, he'd answer, "I'm not rushing. I want to be sure." That had been flattering then. It meant he was serious, that this was an important step for him. But now, sitting in the car heading to this meeting, Kira suddenly realized she was completely unprepared. Not mentally ready, not emotionally ready. And most importantly, she didn't understand why it was happening now. So suddenly, a week ago, Max had simply texted her, "Saturday we're going to my parents. You'll meet the family." He didn't ask if it was convenient, didn't warn her in advance, just presented it as a fact. Kira had been confused then, but also happy. Finally, it meant he really did see a future with her. "I'll pick you up at 6 p.m., he'd said goodbye, kissing her on the forehead. "Just meeting my parents, don't worry. Just a meeting." Kira repeated those words to herself and exhaled. The taxi was pulling up to her building. She paid, stepped out into the cold October air, and hurried to the entrance. For hours until the meeting, and she needed to prepare perfectly. The apartment smelled fresh and clean. She'd been cleaning all morning, even though she knew it was silly. Max wasn't planning to come up. He'd just pick her up at the entrance. But Kira couldn't sit idle. Her nerves demanded activity. She'd washed the floors, dusted, put things in their places, and then took a long shower, trying to wash away the anxiety along with the water. It didn't help. Standing in front of the bathroom mirror, Kira studied her face carefully. Pretty, but not a beauty. Ordinary Slavic features. Light brown hair, gray-blue eyes, neat nose, full lips. Slender figure, average height, 5'5". Nothing special, but Max liked her. He often said she was beautiful, though for the last 2 months, the compliments had become less frequent. Kira started applying makeup. Light foundation to even out her skin tone. A bit of blush on her cheekbones, mascara on her lashes. 2 coats to make her eyes look bigger. Nude lipstick, not bright, but accentuating her lips. She wanted to look natural but well-groomed, not flashy but not plain either. She styled her hair with a blow-dryer, creating soft waves, letting it fall over her shoulders. Max loved when she wore her hair down. She spritzed it with hairspray to hold the style. She applied perfume to her wrists and behind her ears. Her favorite scent, floral but not cloying. Then came time for the dress. Kira took it out of the bag, carefully smoothed it out. The dark emerald color shimmered beautifully in the lamplight. The fabric felt pleasant to the touch. Elegant cut, fitted. Length just above the knee. Covered shoulders, modest neckline. Nothing vulgar. Exactly what was needed for meeting parents. She put on the dress, zipped it up in the back, twirled in front of the mirror. It fit perfectly, accentuated her wasted flaws. Kira selected low-heeled shoes, classic black, added a thin chain necklace and small earrings. No large jewelry, nothing excessive. She looked at herself in the mirror again and nodded. She looked good, confident, worthy. Now all that was left was to wait for Max. And what? Make an impression, be liked. But what if they didn't like her? What if his parents thought she wasn't good enough for their son? Kira sat on the edge of the bed, feeling her heart pounding wildly. Why was she so worried? Usually she was self-confident. At work she was valued. Colleagues respected her. Management listened to her opinion. She independently led major projects, communicated with clients, presented strategies, and always succeeded. So why was she turning into a trembling girl before some family meeting? Her phone vibrated. Message from Max, leaving now. Be there in 40 minutes. Kira typed a response. Okay, I'm ready. She stood, walked to the window. Below, the usual evening life of the residential neighborhood flowed. Children played on the playground. Women with strollers walked along the paths. Men smoked near entrances. Everything so familiar, so ordinary. And for her, today a new chapter was beginning, perhaps the most important one. Max. They'd met 6 months ago at a corporate party with mutual friends. Kira came with a coworker, Max with his friends. They were introduced to each other, and Kira immediately felt interest. He was tall, 6'1", athletic build, dark hair, brown eyes, pleasant smile. Well-dressed, spoke confidently but without pretension. Worked at a large IT company as a programmer. Earned well. You could tell by the watch on his wrist and the car he drove. That evening they talked for 3 hours straight. Max was a charming conversationalist, told funny life stories, was interested in her work, joked tastefully. When the evening ended, he asked for her phone number and called the next day. Invited her to dinner. The first date was perfect. Restaurant, wine, pleasant conversation. Max was attentive, helped with her coat, opened doors, listened without interrupting. After dinner, he walked her home, but didn't insist on coming up. Just kissed her on the cheek and said, I had a really great time with you. Second date. Third, each better than the last. Max brought flowers, texted every day, asked how she was doing. Came over after work, just to be near. After a month, they started dating officially. Kira fell in love. Not immediately, not at first sight, but gradually, stronger with each meeting. Max seemed ideal. He was reliable, predictable, caring. He didn't make scenes, wasn't jealous without reason, didn't control every step. He was just there when needed. The first 3 months were like a fairy tale. They saw each other almost every day. Walked around the city, went to movies, to theaters, to cafes, had dinner at Kira's place, watched series, talked about everything. Max talked about work, about projects, about future plans. Kira shared worries, dreams, ideas. It was easy together. And then something changed. Kira couldn't say exactly when. Maybe in the 4th month. Max started texting less during the day. Before, he'd send messages every 2 to 3 hours, asking how things were, sharing thoughts. Now, he might not write at all until evening. When asked why, he'd answer, busy at work, no time for the phone. They started meeting less often. Once a week, maximum twice. Max cited fatigue, projects, the need to rest. Kira tried not to show hurt, understood that everyone has their own life, their own affairs, but inside anxiety grew. Something wasn't right. She suggested going somewhere together on the weekend. Max refused. Maybe next time. I need to visit my parents. His parents? He often mentioned his parents, but never suggested she go with him. Kira hinted, maybe you'll introduce me? He'd answer evasively, it's too early. I'm not rushing. And Kira waited for that moment when he'd be ready. After all, if he wasn't rushing, it meant he was taking it seriously. Didn't want to bring just anyone into his family. That was good, right? Right? Kira shook her head, dismissing the thoughts. Stop overthinking. Today was exactly that day when everything would change. Max had finally decided to introduce her to his family. This meant their relationship was moving to a new level. It meant he saw a future. Her phone vibrated again. Almost there. Come down. Kira grabbed her black coat, small purse, keys. One last glance in the mirror. Fixed her hair. Exhaled. Everything would be fine. She went down the stairs. The elevator in the building wasn't working again. And went outside. Max stood by his silver sedan, scrolling through his phone. Hearing footsteps, he looked up and smiled. Wow, he said, looking her over from head to toe. You look great. Thank you. Kira smiled back, feeling some of the tension release. You too. Max was in dark jeans, white shirt, and black blazer. Hair neatly styled, beard trimmed. He looked solid and attractive. He opened the door for her, and Kira got into the passenger seat. The car smelled of his cologne, tart and masculine. Max got behind the wheel, started the engine, turned on music. Quiet jazz filled the cabin. They pulled onto the avenue, and Kira decided to speak up. Max, are you sure I'm dressed right? Maybe it's too fancy. No, everything's perfect. He glanced at her quickly. Exactly what's needed. And who exactly should I expect today? Just your parents. Max hesitated, turned on the signal, changed lanes. He was silent for several seconds, and this silence alarmed Kira. Well, definitely parents, he finally said. And probably my sister with her family. My brother might come too. Kira felt her stomach clench. So it won't be just the four of us. Well, maybe 10 people, Max said casually. No more. 10 people. This wasn't a modest family dinner. This was a whole crowd. Max, but you said it would be simple. Kira tried to keep her tone calm. You and me, your parents, relaxed atmosphere. I didn't say it would just be us, he objected, and there was light irritation in his voice. I said it was a family dinner, and I have a large family. Kira fell silent. She wanted to object, remind him that he specifically used the word simple. But she stayed quiet, didn't want conflict before the meeting. What if he got angry, turned the car around, and everything fell apart? They drove in silence for about 15 minutes. Max looked at the road, tapping his fingers on the wheel to the beat of the music. Kira looked out the window, trying to calm down. 10 people. Okay, not scary. The main thing was to behave naturally, answer questions, smile. Everything would work out. The car turned toward downtown. Kira recognized the area. Near Times Square, expensive boutiques, restaurants, office buildings. She rarely came here. Prices in local establishments didn't match her budget. Where are we going? She asked. A restaurant, Max answered briefly. Kira frowned. What restaurant? You said the dinner would be at your parents' house. The day before yesterday you said, come to our place, Mom will make her signature duck. Max frowned, as if trying to remember. Mom decided it would be more convenient at a restaurant, he finally said. No need to cook, clean, and more atmosphere. But why didn't you warn me? Kira, don't complicate things. His voice sounded tired. What difference does it make where we meet? The main thing is the people. Kira was silent again. there was a big difference. At home you could relax, be yourself. In a restaurant you had to keep your face on, watch your manners, use utensils correctly. And besides, a restaurant was a completely different atmosphere. The car slowed near a building with the sign La Maison. Kira recognized the name. This was one of the expensive restaurants written about in magazines. The average check here started at $60 per person. "We're here," she asked quietly. "Yes." Max turned off the engine, turned to her. "Ready." Kira looked at the restaurant. Through the large windows, luxurious interiors were visible. Crystal chandeliers, snow-white tablecloths, waiters in strict suits. "Max, this is very expensive." She couldn't help herself. "About how much will dinner cost?" He looked at her in surprise. "Why do you need to know?" "My parents will pay. Everything's already ordered." Kira exhaled with relief. Well, of course, if the parents invited, they'd pay. That's how it always works. Silly to worry. Okay. She tried to smile. "Let's go." They got out of the car. The cold October wind tousled Kira's hair, and she hurried to fix her hairstyle. Max took her by the elbow, and they headed to the entrance. At the door, they were met by a doorman in livery and white gloves. He nodded, opened the door. Inside it smelled of expensive perfume, coffee, and something exquisitely delicious. Quiet classical music played. The hall was about half full. At tables sat people in business suits and evening dresses, conversing quietly, studying menus. A maitre d' approached them, a tall man of about 40, in an impeccable black suit. "Mr. Solovyov?" he asked with a professional smile. "Yes," Max nodded. "Your party is already waiting. Please follow me." He turned and headed deep into the hall. Kira and Max followed him. With each step, Kira felt the tension building. Her palms were sweating, her heart pounding. Just a few more seconds, and she'd see Max's family. The maitre d' stopped near a large round table in the corner of the hall. Kira looked up and froze. At the table sat not 10 people, but 15. 15 pairs of eyes stared at her. Adults, children, an elderly woman, men in suits, women in dresses. Everyone was looking at her with undisguised curiosity. "And here are our young people." A loud voice broke the silence. A woman in the center of the table stood up. She was about 55, full figure, tightly wrapped in a dark blue dress. On her neck was a massive gold necklace, on her hands several bracelets and rings. Hair cut short, face heavily made up, commanding expression, heavy gaze. "Maxie, come here, darling." She spread her arms wide. Max obediently stepped forward, allowing himself to be hugged. Kira remained standing, clutching her purse handle so tightly that her knuckles turned white. "And this must be your Kira." The woman released her son, turned to her. "Well, come here, girl, don't be shy." Kira forced herself to step forward, extended her hand for a handshake. "Hello, very nice to meet you." The woman ignored the extended hand. Instead, she firmly hugged Kira, pulling her to her soft chest. The sharp smell of expensive perfume hit her nose. "I'm Larissa Mikhailovna, Max's mother," she said, pulling back. "And this," she swept her hand around the table, "is our family." Kira quickly scanned those gathered. A man of about 50 with a receding hairline sitting next to Larissa Mikhailovna must be Max's father. He indifferently nodded to Kira and returned to studying the menu. Next to the father sat a young woman of about 30, beautiful, well-groomed, with a haughty expression. Dark hair gathered in an elegant bun. Makeup perfect, expensive dress. The sister, Kira understood. Next to her, a man in a gray suit, apparently her husband, and 2 children, a boy about 10 and a girl about 7, both glued to their phones. Further sat a man who looked like Max, but older and bigger, the brother. Next to him was a plump woman with a tired face and a teenage boy about 13, bored, chewing bread. At the end of the table sat an elderly woman with gray hair in a bun. Grandmother, apparently, and 3 more middle-aged men whom Kira had no idea who they were. Sit down, commanded Larissa Mikhailovna, pointing to 2 empty seats in the center of the table, right across from her. Kira lowered herself into the chair, feeling her legs give way. Max sat next to her. She cast a quick glance at him, hoping for support, but he was looking at the menu as if nothing unusual was happening. Waiter! Larissa Mikhailovna snapped her fingers. A young man in a white shirt and black vest immediately approached the table with menus in hand. I'm listening. Bring the wine list, ordered Larissa Mikhailovna. And this, she poked her finger at the menu without looking at the name. And this for everyone. Kira tried to see what exactly was being ordered, but the menu had already closed. All clear? Asked Larissa Mikhailovna. Yes, we'll bring it right away. The waiter nodded and hurried off. Larissa Mikhailovna turned to Kira with her whole body. Well, tell us, girl. Max said you're a marketing specialist. Yes. Kira tried to speak confidently. I work at an agency handling brand promotion, strategy development. Interesting. Larissa Mikhailovna nodded. And do they pay well at these agencies of yours? The question hung in the air. Everyone at the table fell silent, turned to Kira. She felt her cheeks flush. It wasn't customary to talk about salary at a first meeting. It was tactless. Well, average market salary, she answered evasively. More specifically, Larissa Mikhailovna persisted. We're almost family now. No secrets. Mom, why are you? Max feebly tried to intervene. Larissa Mikhailovna shot him such a look that he immediately fell silent. $82,000 a year, Kira said quietly, feeling humiliated. Oh, not bad. Larissa Mikhailovna nodded with satisfaction. Good girl, independent. I respect that. Kira didn't know what to answer. She felt like she was being interrogated. And do you have your own place? Asked the woman sitting next to Max's brother. This was that same plump woman with the tired face. Yes, answered Kira. 1 bedroom. Larissa Mikhailovna clarified. Yes. With a mortgage, Kira admitted. Ah, the sister drawled, that same well-groomed beauty. A mortgage. I wouldn't risk it. It's bondage for decades. But at least it's your own place. Kira tried to defend herself. Better than renting. I don't know. The sister shook her head, skeptically. I prefer to live here and now. My husband earns well. We rent a 3-bedroom in a decent neighborhood. And our parents will buy us an apartment later. Right, Mom? Of course, Alina dear. Larissa Mikhailovna patted her daughter's hand. We'll help all the children. We'll buy for Max, too, when he gets married. Kira felt a sting. So Max was living in a rental apartment waiting for his parents to buy him his own, while she was paying off a mortgage herself, giving half her salary. Where was the fairness? The waiter brought wine. 3 bottles with French labels. Kira didn't know much about wine, but from the look of the bottles she understood. Expensive. Larissa Mikhailovna filled the glasses. Well, let's toast to meeting. She raised her glass. To Max finally bringing a girl. We were starting to think he'd become a monk. Everyone at the table laughed. Kira tried to smile, raised her glass, took a small sip. The wine was tart and strong. They started bringing dishes. First cold appetizers. Oysters on ice, salmon tartare, beef carpaccio. Then salads with shrimp, with crab meat, with truffles. Kira looked at the abundance with growing anxiety. This cost huge money. Help yourselves, don't be shy, commanded Larissa Mikhailovna. Kira took a fork, tried the shrimp salad. Delicious, but she had no appetite. Her stomach had clenched from tension. The conversation at the table livened up. Alina, Max's sister, was talking about the upcoming renovation at their dacha. We ordered Italian tile for the pool. $3,500 for the batch. but what beauty it'll be. Her husband agreed. Max's brother Roman complained about private school prices. $1,400 a month for one child. Highway robbery. One of the men Kira didn't know was discussing with Max's father a new Mercedes model. $7,000 extra for the full options package, but it's worth it. Completely different comfort. Kira listened silently, feeling alien. These people lived in a different world. A world where $3,500 for tile was normal, where $1,400 a month for school was ordinary expenses. And she was happy when she managed to save $50 a month. The dishes kept arriving. Hot dishes, steaks of various degrees of doneness, grilled lobster, duck confit, rabbit in cream sauce. Side dishes, truffle risotto, rosemary potatoes, grilled vegetables. Sauces, bread, butter. The children demanded more ice cream, even though the main courses hadn't been finished. Larissa Mikhailovna casually waved at the waiter. Bring it, bring whatever they ask for. Wine flowed like a river. Glasses were refilled again and again. Kira drank little, afraid of getting drunk and saying something wrong. Max was silent all evening. Sat, ate, occasionally nodded at relatives' remarks, but hardly spoke himself. Kira tried several times to catch his gaze, but he looked at his plate or phone. Max, when are you planning the wedding? The grandmother suddenly asked the elderly woman with gray hair. Kira froze. Her fork stopped halfway to her mouth. Grandma, it's too early, Max muttered. Too early. Larissa Mikhailovna was indignant. You're 32 years old. Time to start a family, have children. Mom, not in front of Kira, he asked embarrassedly. What's wrong? Larissa Mikhailovna turned to Kira. You want children, don't you? Kira was confused. Of course she wanted them someday, but not now. Not discussing it in this setting. Yes, I want them, she answered quietly. Well, that's perfect. Larissa Mikhailovna nodded with satisfaction. So everything fits. Max, don't drag it out. Propose before you lose her. Max mumbled something unintelligible. Kira felt herself blushing. This was so awkward, so wrong. You don't talk about weddings at the first meeting with parents. This was an intimate topic that should be discussed as a couple, not in front of 15 witnesses. Finally, they brought desserts. Tiramisu, panna cotta, chocolate fondant, fruit tartlets, ice cream. The children pounced on the sweets. Adults leisurely tasted. Kira took a spoon of panna cotta but couldn't eat. A lump in her throat prevented swallowing. She glanced at her watch furtively. 2.5 hours had passed. When would this end? She wanted to go home, to her tiny studio where she could take off this damn dress, wash off the makeup, and just lie in bed. Finally, dinner came to an end. Plates were cleared, the table cleaned. Larissa Mikhailovna leaned back in her chair with a satisfied look. Well, did we have a good time? Everyone nodded, agreed. The children were back on their phones. Adults chatted relaxedly. Kira sat quietly, hoping that now everyone would get up and leave. But then the waiter approached the table, the young guy who'd been serving them all evening. In his hands was a leather folder. Excuse me, your check, he said, handing the folder to Larissa Mikhailovna. Larissa Mikhailovna took the folder, casually opened it, glanced at the number. Kira couldn't see the amount, but from the woman's expression, she understood. Expensive. So, Larissa Mikhailovna closed the folder and turned to Kira. Kira felt her heart sink. Sweetheart, Larissa Mikhailovna smiled, and there was something predatory in that smile. You pay. Kira stared at Larissa Mikhailovna, not believing her ears. The word pay hung in the air like a punch to the gut. Excuse me, what? She squeezed out. I said, pay the check, dear. Larissa Mikhailovna repeated with the same smile. We'll wait outside. Kira felt the blood drain from her face. She looked at Max. He sat staring at his phone as if he hadn't heard what just happened. Max, she called quietly. He didn't answer, didn't even look up. Max, Kira repeated louder. Reluctantly, he looked up from the screen. Your mother says I should pay the check. Max awkwardly shrugged. Well, Mom decided that would be right. Kira couldn't believe what was happening. She'd been invited to meet the family. Max had promised everything was paid for, and now his mother was demanding she pay for 15 people at an expensive restaurant. But you said your parents would pay. She tried to stay calm. You yourself said everything was already taken care of. I said ordered, Max objected. But you were supposed to pay. It's logical. Logical. Kira's voice trembled. How is this logical? Larissa Mikhailovna put her elbows on the table, clasped her fingers, looked at Kira with a heavy gaze. My dear girl, you're claiming the position of my son's wife. We need to understand how serious you are, whether you're ready to invest in the relationship. This is, you could say, a test. Kira slowly turned her head, swept her gaze around the table. Everyone was watching her. Max's sister Alina with a cold smirk, brother Roman with indifference, the father with expectation, grandmother with curiosity, the other relatives, some with interest, some with boredom. A test, Kira repeated. So you invited me to a meeting, fed the whole family at an expensive restaurant, and now you're demanding I pay for everyone? And this is a test. Exactly. Larissa Mikhailovna nodded with satisfaction. If you really love Max, you won't regret it. Kira looked at the check lying in front of Larissa Mikhailovna. The folder was open, and the numbers were clearly visible. $3,200. More than a month of her salary. More than 6 months of mortgage payments. She slowly leaned back in her chair. Her head was strangely empty. Shock was giving way to cold fury. Max, she said very quietly, did you know about this? He was silent. Max, Kira raised her voice. Did you know they were going to make me pay? Not make, Larissa Mikhailovna intervened. Ask. We're not animals to forcibly extract money. You invited me under the guise of a family dinner. Kira's voice trembled with anger. Max promised it would be simple. Just meeting my parents. Don't worry. That's what he said. And instead I ended up at a banquet with 15 people, where I was interrogated about my salary, humiliated about my mortgage, and now you're demanding I pay a check for $3,200. Don't shout, please, Larissa Mikhailovna winced. We're in a respectable place. Respectable people don't set up provocations like this in respectable places. Kira was no longer holding back. People at neighboring tables started turning around. Waiters exchanged glances. Kira saw this but didn't care. Listen, Kira, Max began. No, you listen. She turned sharply to him. All this time you've been lying to me. You said you weren't rushing to introduce me to your parents because you took the relationship seriously. But actually you were preparing me for this circus. Don't call my family a circus. Max's voice became cold. What should I call them? Kira stood up. You lured me here by deception to extort money. What a crude word, extort, Alina, Max's sister, twisted her lips. We just want to understand if you're worthy of our family. Worthy. Kira laughed, and the laugh sounded hysterical. Are you serious? You think a person is worthy of your family if they're ready to give their last money for your whims. Money shows true relationships, interjected Roman's wife, Max's brother's wife. That same plump woman with the tired face. When I met Roman, I also went through a test. I paid for dinner. Didn't regret it, and we've been together 10 years now. Kira looked at her more carefully. Tired face, dull eyes, cheap dress compared to the outfits of the other women at the table. 10 years with this family, and here was the result. I don't want that kind of life, Kira said. So you're refusing to pay? Larissa Mikhailovna clarified, and steel sounded in her voice. I didn't say I was refusing. Kira took her purse from the table. I'll think about it. Oh, you'll think, Alina snorted. And we'll sit here while you think. You can leave, Kira answered coldly. I said I need to think. No, dear, that won't work. Larissa Mikhailovna stood up. Either you pay now, or we'll understand you're not right for us. Kira felt everything inside compress into a tight knot. An ultimatum. A crude, cynical ultimatum. She looked at Max. He sat looking at his empty plate, not defending her, not speaking up, just sitting. Max, she called one last time. Say something. He raised his eyes. There was no love in them, no regret, only cold expectation. If you're not ready, then you're not ready, he shrugged. Maybe we really rushed. There it was, betrayal in its purest form. Kira nodded. Everything inside went cold, as if someone had filled her with ice. Okay, she said calmly. I'll pay. Larissa Mikhailovna smiled contentedly. That's my good girl. I knew you were a sensible person. Kira opened her purse, took out her wallet. The whole family watched her expectantly. The waiter who stood nearby was also watching. And then Kira raised her hand, beckoning him. The waiter came closer, and Kira suddenly saw his face properly. Not just a young man in uniform, but wait. She knew this face. Andrew, she asked quietly. The waiter blinked, peered at her. Kira? Kira Sokolova, is that you? They froze, staring at each other. Andrew Peterson, her classmate. They'd gone to school together from 1st through 12th grade, sat at neighboring desks, prepared for exams, went to school dances. I can't believe it. Andrew smiled. How many years has it been? 10, 11. Kira smiled too, and for the first time all evening the smile was genuine. You work here? Yeah, for 3 years now. And you? He looked at the table, at the family, and the smile faded. Are these your relatives? No, Kira answered shortly. My boyfriend's relatives. She said the word ex-boyfriend firmly, and it sounded like a verdict. Sorry to interrupt your reunion, Alina threw out venomously, but we have a check to pay here. Kira turned to her. Yes, the check. Andrew, bring me a separate check, please. Everyone at the table froze. What? Larissa Mikhailovna asked. I asked for a separate check, Kira repeated louder. In my name. Only for what I ate. Andrew nodded understandingly. Right away. He went to the register. Kira remained standing, looking at the stunned faces of the Solovyov family. What are you doing? Max jumped up. Are you serious? Absolutely. Kira looked him in the eyes. You said, just meeting my parents, don't worry. But you brought me to a banquet with 15 people where your mother demanded I pay a check for $3,200. Do you all think I'm a fool? Think I'll tolerate this treatment? You're obligated to pay. Larissa Mikhailovna screamed. We invited you. No, you deceived me. Kira spoke calmly, but each word was clear. Max lied about the format of the meeting. You set up a provocation, and now you're demanding money. But I won't pay for your games. Andrew returned with a small check. Your bill is $18. Kira took the check, pulled out her card, handed it to the waiter. He processed the payment through a portable terminal. Transaction successful. Thank you, Kira said, taking back her card. Then she turned to the Solovyov family. All the best. I paid only for myself. Goodbye. She turned and headed for the exit. Behind her erupted shouting. Stop! You have no right. Come back immediately. Max, stop her. Kira didn't turn around. She walked to the exit, and with each step it became easier, as if she were shedding a heavy burden from her shoulders. At the door, Andrew called out to her. Kira, wait. She stopped. He came up, handed her a business card. If you need anything, call. I'm glad I met you, even in these circumstances. Thank you. Kira took the card. Thank you for helping. Always welcome. Andrew smiled. By the way, I'll keep them here another 10 minutes. We have a policy. Until the bill is paid, guests stay in the hall. So you have time to leave calmly. Kira nodded gratefully and walked out of the restaurant onto the street. The cold October air burned her face. She breathed in deeply, closed her eyes. Free. She took out her phone, blocked Max and all messengers on social networks in her phone book, deleted his number, erased photos. That's it. The end. Then she called an Uber. In 3 minutes a car pulled up. Kira got in the back seat, gave the address. While riding, she called her mom. She answered on the second ring. Kira, honey, how did it go? Mom. Kira felt a lump rising to her throat. You were right. Max turned out not to be who I thought he was. What happened? Mom immediately became alert. Kira told everything, leaving out no details. The restaurant, 15 people, interrogation about salary, demand to pay a check for $3,200, Max's betrayal, and how she paid only for herself and left. Mom listened silently. When Kira finished, she exhaled. You did the right thing, sweetheart. I'm proud of you. Not every girl in that situation would find the strength to leave. I was scared, Kira admitted, but I remembered your words, that I don't owe anyone anything. And it's true. Remember forever, you don't owe anyone anything, especially those who don't respect you. Kira felt tears running down her cheeks, not from grief, but from relief. I avoided nightmare. Yes, sunshine. Imagine if you'd married him. That family would have eaten you alive within a year. Kira nodded, though her mom couldn't see. Yes, she could imagine. A life of constant control, humiliation, constantly having to prove her worth. Max, who wouldn't defend her, but would hide behind his mother's skirt. A tyrannical mother-in-law who dictated the rules. Relatives who looked down on her. Thank you, Mom. Thank you for warning me. The main thing is you figured it out yourself. Come over tomorrow, we'll talk properly. I'll bake your favorite pie. I'll definitely come. They said goodbye. The Uber pulled up to Kira's building. She paid, got out, climbed the stairs to the 4th floor, opened the apartment door. Home was quiet and cozy. Her small studio with a mortgage on the outskirts of Manhattan. But hers, earned by her own work, not gifted by anyone, not bought by parents. Kira kicked off her shoes, pulled off that damned emerald dress that cost $95, hung it in the closet. She'd never wear it again. Let it hang as a reminder of what lesson she'd learned today. She washed her face, removed her makeup, put on comfortable pajamas, got into bed, pulled up the blanket. Outside the window, nighttime New York hummed. Familiar sounds. Her phone vibrated. Kira took it out, saw a notification, a message from an unknown number. She opened it. This is Roman, Max's brother. You acted like a pig. They detained us at the restaurant, demanded we pay the check. The whole family had to chip in. Shame on you. You'll regret this. Kira read it, smirked, deleted the message, blocked the number. Let them write as much as they want. She didn't care. Another message came from Alina, Max's sister. Think you're smart? We've seen people like you. Max will find a better girl, and you'll be alone with your mortgage. Delete block. Third message from Larissa Mikhailovna herself. Girl, you made a big mistake. Max, and I could have provided you a good life. Now you'll return to your poverty. Think again. Delete block. Kira turned off her phone, put it on the nightstand, closed her eyes. She felt calm. For the first time in a long time, truly calm. Yes, she'd spent $95 on a dress for nothing. Yes, she'd spent a terrible evening in the company of toxic people. Yes, she'd ended her relationship with Max. But she'd kept her dignity, hadn't let herself be used, hadn't agreed to tolerate humiliation, had walked away with her head held high. 3 days later, the story swept through their entire circle of mutual acquaintances. Kira was sitting at work when Jenny texted her, that same co-worker she'd had lunch with before the fateful meeting. Kira, do you know that the whole internet is talking about you and Max? His sister posted on social media. Kira frowned, opened the link. A post from Alina Solovayova, Max's sister, had already gotten 400 comments. Introduced my brother to a girl. Set up a gorgeous reception at an expensive restaurant. Laid out a luxurious table, and she embarrassed us. Paid only for herself and ran away, leaving the whole family to pay for her presence. Young people have become so brazen. No respect for elders. The comments were mixed. Some wrote, "The girl did the right thing. Why should she pay for you?" Others were outraged. Ungrateful, they invited her and she showed such rudeness. Kira read it and closed it. She didn't care. Let them write what they want. She knew the truth, and that was enough. But an hour later, an unknown number called. Kira answered, "Hello, Kira Sokolova." An unfamiliar woman's voice. "Hello, my name is Irina. I'm a journalist for an online publication, City Stories. I saw the story about your dinner with the Solovyov family. I'd like to hear your version of events." Kira thought about it. On one hand, she didn't want to inflate the scandal. On the other, Alina had already posted everything on social media, distorting the facts. Maybe it was worth telling the truth? Okay, she decided. I'll tell you. The interview came out the next day. Kira honestly described everything. How Max promised a simple meeting with parents, how it turned out to be 15 people instead of 4, how she was interrogated about salary and mortgage, how they demanded she pay a check for $3,200, and how she paid only for herself and left. The article was reposted thousands of times. Comments poured in like an avalanche. Most supported Kira. Good for her, didn't let herself be used. This is a classic money scam. Good thing she saw through it in time. I had something similar. My boyfriend's parents demanded I pay for their vacation as a test. I told them off too. There were critics too, but they were in the minority. And 2 days later, Andrew wrote to Kira, that same classmate waiter. "Hi, how are you? I have news. The Solovyov family can't visit our restaurant anymore. Management put them on the blacklist after the scandal. They tried to demand compensation, saying we ruined their reputation. But we have everything on camera. You can see Larissa Mikhailovna ordering dishes and then demanding you pay. Anyway, they got banned. Justice prevailed." Kira smiled. It was nice to know they'd faced at least some consequences. She replied, "Thanks for telling me. How are you? Work okay?" They texted all evening. It turned out Andrew was working as a waiter while studying evenings. Studying hospitality management, planning to open his own cafe. Living with his parents, saving money. He was cheerful, open, and an interesting conversationalist. "Let's meet up sometime," he suggested. "Just as friends, movies, or an exhibition. We haven't seen each other in so many years. There's so much to discuss." "Let's," Kira agreed. They met up a week later, went to a modern art exhibition, then had coffee at a cozy cafe, chatted, laughed, remembered school. Andrew turned out to be an attentive listener. He didn't ask about Max, didn't pressure, was just there. Kira felt lightness. No tension, no games. Just good company with an old friend. At the end of the meeting, Andrew walked her to the subway. "I had a great time. Let's do it again." "Definitely," Kira smiled. They exchanged numbers, now officially, not as a chance meeting at a restaurant. And the next day, Kira got another text from an unknown number. This time male. "Kira Sokolova." "Yes. My name is Viktor Semenovic. I'm the Solovyov family's lawyer. They're demanding you make a public apology and pay $6,000 in compensation for emotional damages." Kira laughed, couldn't help herself. For what exactly? For slander, spreading false information, damaging reputation. "I have a witness, the waiter who saw everything. The restaurant has video recordings. I have a receipt showing I paid only $18. What slander?" The lawyer hesitated. "Nevertheless, my clients insist." "Let them file a lawsuit," Kira answered calmly. I'm not afraid. Everything I said is the truth. And truth is the best defense. She hung up. No apologies, no compensation. Let them sue all they want. A month later, no lawsuit came. Apparently the lawyer explained to the Solovyovs that they had zero chance of winning. Kira returned to her regular life. Work, home, gym, meetings with friends. She enrolled in English classes, had wanted to improve for a while. Started saving money for vacation. Planning to go to Italy in the summer. She and Andrew continued meeting as friends, without obligations. They went to movies, concerts, museums. Kira was grateful to fate for this meeting. Andrew helped her believe that not all people were hypocritical and mercenary. One day, walking in the park, Andrew asked, "Do you regret what happened with Max?" Kira thought about it. "No, I only regret the wasted time. 6 months could have been spent usefully, not with someone who didn't value me. And I'm glad," Andrew admitted. "If not for that dinner, we wouldn't have met again." Kira looked at him. Kind brown eyes, open smile. No falseness. "Yeah, there's a silver lining to that," she agreed. 3 months passed. Winter turned to spring. Kira got promoted at work. Now she headed her own department. Salary increased to $98,000. The mortgage became less scary. There was money for small joys. Her friendship with Andrew gradually grew into something more. He didn't make sudden moves, didn't pressure, was just there, supporting, caring. And one day Kira realized she was in love. Truly, not like with Max. Without illusions, without rose-colored glasses. She just saw a good person and wanted to be with him. They started dating officially in April. Walking along the Hudson River, Andrew held her hand and Kira felt peace. Not a storm of emotions, not euphoria. Calm confidence that everything was right. Andrew introduced her to his parents after a month. A modest dinner at home, the 4 of them. His mom made homemade dumplings. His dad told jokes. They welcomed Kira warmly, without interrogation, without tests. They were just happy their son had a good girlfriend. "You know," Andrew said as they were returning to Kira's place, "my parents always said, family should accept, not examine." Wise people, Kira smiled. And in early summer, she got an unexpected message from Roman's wife, Max's brother's wife, that same tired woman who'd sat at that ill-fated table. "Kira, hello. This is Oksana, Roman Solovyov's wife. I want to say thank you. When I sat at that table and said I went through the test and didn't regret the money, I was lying. Lying to myself and everyone around. Actually, I regretted it every day for these 10 years. I was just afraid to admit it. Your actions showed me that it's possible to do things differently, that you don't have to tolerate it. I filed for divorce, took my son, moved out, got a new job. We live modestly, but I'm happy. For the first time in 10 years, I feel like a person, not a servant. Thank you." Kira read the message and felt warmth in her chest. So her story had helped someone else. Maybe it wasn't all for nothing? She replied, "Oksana, hang in there. You're brave for deciding. I wish you happiness and strength." In the summer, Kira really did go to Italy with Andrew. They walked through Rome, ate gelato, drank wine, admired the architecture. It was easy, fun, good. "I'm glad we met," Andrew said one evening as they sat on a terrace watching the sunset. "Me too," Kira leaned against him. "Very glad." "You know, sometimes bad events lead to good consequences," he said thoughtfully. "If not for that dinner, we'd have just remained classmates from the past." "You're right," Kira nodded. "But I'm still grateful to fate for pulling me out of that relationship in time, before a wedding, before kids. Imagine if I'd married Max." "I don't want to imagine." Andrew kissed the top of her head. "I'm glad you turned out to be strong." Kira smiled. Yes, she turned out to be strong. Found the courage to leave when needed. Didn't tolerate humiliation for the sake of a phantom future. Chose herself. And what happened to Max? Kira didn't know exactly. She'd heard from mutual acquaintances that he'd tried several times to contact her through third parties. Asked for a chance to explain, but Kira refused. There was nothing to explain. Everything was already clear. They said Larissa Mikhailovna was now actively looking for a new bride for her son, arranging matchmaking meetings, inviting candidates, but the girls quickly scattered after the first meeting with the family. The story with Kira had spread around the city, and everyone knew what to expect from the Solovyovs. Max remained alone. 32 years old, no wife, no children, under the wing of his domineering mother. Did Kira feel sorry for him? No. He'd made his choice that day in the restaurant. Chose his mother over his girlfriend. Everyone gets what they deserve. In the fall, Kira marked the anniversary of that dinner. A year ago, she'd been sitting in an Uber, nervous, heading to meet Max's family. And now she was happy, free, with the man she loved by her side. Andrew cooked dinner at his place, not at a restaurant, at home. Simple menu, roasted chicken, salad, homemade pie, but cozy, warm with soul. To you he raised his glass, to your courage and strength. To us, Kira corrected, to the fact that we met. They clinked glasses, drank, and Kira thought about how strangely life works. Sometimes you need to go through pain to find happiness. You need to lose the wrong person to meet the right one. She'd never forget that evening at La Maison. 15 people at the table, a check for $3,200, Max's betrayal. But now she remembered without anger, just as a lesson that you can't tolerate disrespect, that you can't sacrifice yourself for someone else's comfort, that sometimes leaving isn't weakness, but strength. What are you thinking about? Andrew asked, noticing her distant look. Oh, just, Kira smiled, thinking how lucky I am. I'm lucky too. He took her hand, intertwined his fingers with hers. Very lucky. They sat in the kitchen, drank tea, talked about plans. Andrew talked about his future cafe. Kira about a project at work. An ordinary evening, ordinary life. No drama, no scandals. Just two people who were good together. And Kira was grateful to fate for that lesson. Cruel, painful, but necessary. It taught her to value herself, not to settle for less, to demand respect, and also to see red flags, evasive answers, secrecy, unwillingness to introduce her to his family circle. All of this was there with Max from the beginning. But she didn't want to notice. Fell in love and closed her eyes. Another 6 months passed. Kira and Andrew moved in together, rented a 2-bedroom in a decent neighborhood, furnished it to their taste. Andrew opened his cafe, small, cozy, with a homey atmosphere. Kira helped him with marketing, promotion. Business was going well. One winter evening they were walking through a snowy park. Andrew suddenly stopped, turned to Kira. I want to ask you something. I'm listening, she smiled. He took a small box from his pocket, opened it. Inside was a modest silver ring with a small stone. Kira, I'm not rich. I can't buy you a 1-carat diamond. I can't arrange a grand proposal. But I love you and want to be with you for the rest of my life. Will you marry me? Kira looked at the ring, at his sincere eyes, and felt her heart fill with happiness. Yes, she said. Of course, yes. Andrew put the ring on her finger, hugged her, spun her around. They stood in the middle of the park, kissing, laughing, while snow fell on their shoulders, white and pure, like the beginning of a new life. They had the wedding in spring, modest, intimate. 20 people, the closest ones. Kira's parents, Andrew's parents, friends, colleagues. They chose a simple but pleasant restaurant. The menu was delicious, but without excess. Kira wore a white dress, simple and elegant. Not for $95, but for $150, but bought with joy without regrets. When they exchanged rings, Kira looked into Andrew's eyes and understood. This was it, the real thing. Without games, without tests, without manipulation. Just love and respect. At the reception, there weren't 15 relatives demanding money. There wasn't a domineering mother-in-law dictating rules. There were only loving people, rejoicing for the newlyweds. Kira's mom at one point came up to her daughter, hugged her. "I'm so proud of you, sunshine. You found your happiness." "I did, Mom." Kira pressed against her. "Thank you for teaching me not to tolerate. That's the most important lesson in life." Mom kissed her on the forehead. "Remember it always." The evening flew by unnoticed. Dancing, laughter, toasts, congratulations. Kira felt in her place, next to the right person, surrounded by the right people. And somewhere on the other side of the city, Max sat in his rental apartment, scrolling through his social media feed. Came across a photo of Kira in a wedding dress. He looked at it for a long time, then closed the app, turned off his phone. Larissa Mikhailovna had called him 5 times that day, demanded he come over to discuss yet another bride candidate. Max didn't answer. He was tired of his mother, of the tests, of this whole circus. Maybe it was too late that he realized what he'd lost, or maybe just in time to start changing. But this was no longer Kira's story. Her story ended well, with a happy marriage, a loving husband, a peaceful life. She never again allowed herself to be used, didn't tolerate disrespect, didn't sacrifice herself. She remembered that evening at the restaurant, remembered how she got up from the table and left. And that memory warmed her soul, because she'd chosen herself. And that was the right decision. Years later, when Kira told this story to friends or acquaintances, everyone was amazed. "And you really only paid for yourself?" "Really," Kira would answer. $18. Not a penny more." "Didn't you feel bad for Max?" "No. I only felt bad about the time wasted on him." And that was the honest truth. Kira never once regretted her decision, never once wondered if maybe she should have given him a second chance. Because she knew people who betray once will betray again. Max chose his mother over her. That was his choice. And she chose herself. And that was the best choice of her life. Kira's story became legendary in their circle. They told girlfriends, warning, "Watch out. Don't fall for something like that." Her example inspired other women not to tolerate toxic relationships. And Kira herself just lived, happily, peacefully with the person she loved. She worked, traveled, made plans, and every day she thanked fate for that evening at the restaurant.